First, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I want to welcome all of you to sunny San Francisco. Glad you could come. We begin today the first of 7, and the purpose of this series is to rip away any veil that is separating us from what you might call the golden city, the city of grace, which the Bible refers to as the kingdom of heaven on earth. To us, it is not an abstraction, and it will not remain an abstraction for whoever is willing to lay aside not only cherished ideas, but ideas that are in common parlance all over the world today. And so our methods must be rather drastic in this series. We cannot afford to leave you in doubt. We cannot afford to leave you in between two worlds. Paul, on the way to Damascus, was taken outside of mortality. And as he puts it in Corinthians, after the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there were some who saw him. Paul puts it this way: then he was buried, and he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. Then he was seen of Cephas, and then of the 12. After that he was seen of about 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this presence, but some are fallen asleep. And after that he was seen of James, and then of all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen of me, as one born out of due time. Not having traveled with the Master, he was born out of due time. Now this, then, must be placed as Paul seeing Jesus Christ after the ascension. So it would not be impossible for anyone on earth today to see Jesus Christ after the ascension. But then Paul, having finally been accepted to some degree by the other apostles, went on to teach certain phrases that we have all accepted. The church has accepted them. They've been put into the Bible as spiritual law. And yet, for some strange reason, the church has not actually accepted the statements that they have permitted in the Bible. And as a consequence, very few people in the world have accepted the statements of Paul at certain places. You'll find that you have not accepted them either. Now, Paul tells us to be carnally minded is death. He says that in Romans. I want to read what precedes that, because it's going to be a very important part of these next 6 weeks following today. There is, says Paul, no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Now he's pointing out that if you walk in the Spirit, you are in the one. You're not in a karmic state. You're not in condemnation. But if you walk after the flesh, you are in a karmic state. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. And here is a human being walking the earth saying that he is free from the law of death. How could that be? What has he discovered that makes him free from the law of death that you and I have not discovered? He's going to tell us. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. Now all of this sounds very religious talk. But it isn't. It's esoteric talk, and you've got to look under it. That the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Now let's get down to the line. For they that are of the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death. Now that's translated carnally minded, and you can see that it could be translated just as easily, to be material minded is death. The secret of Paul, that he was not subject to death, was that he was not material minded. Today, we're going to see the Bible another way. Yes, still another way than we've ever seen it. Science has helped us out by giving us a new phrase. Every school child in high school, college, universities around the world knows all about the atomic theory. Metaphysicians know about the atomic theory, theologians know about the atomic theory, and strangely, just about everyone accepts it. Even religion accepts the atomic theory in a sort of a fuzzy way. And yet, atoms are the substance of matter. To be material-minded is death. To be atomic-minded is death. As long as there is a belief in the existence of the atom, you fall under Paul's statement, to be material-minded is death. If you think there is an atom in this universe, Paul is telling you, you must die. To be atomic-minded is death, because science has given us the statement and the proof that the atom is the substance of the matter of which we are material-minded. And so we must come to grips today with the atom, and then you will see why the Bible, up to this point, has not yet fulfilled its function on the earth, but why it will. For 1800 years, there was no mention of the atom in the Bible. And there couldn't be any, because no one had discovered and proved that the atom was the substance of all things. And so as a consequence, no commentator on the Bible before the 18th century ever referred to the atom. And yet the Bible itself had said, the flesh profiteth nothing. And what is flesh, says science? Now, flesh is atoms. Therefore, the Bible was saying the atom profiteth nothing. The Bible had said, henceforth know ye no man after the flesh, and flesh is atom, so it could have said, henceforth know ye no man after the atom. In other words, the metaphysician says there is no matter, but he has not gone the whole way. He still thinks there are atoms, even though he thinks there is no matter. And so we come to this place. We have in our studies gathered together the materials of truth, like building a fire. We have the shavings, we have the logs, we have a little can of kerosene, but we don't have a fire because that little tip of sulfur hasn't been ignited. And so it is with us in truth. We have all the truth. What keeps us out of the kingdom of heaven? we have not lit the flame of self. And the separation between the self, which is the living kingdom of heaven on earth, and the material world, is that little fellow, the invisible atom. Until you recognize the nature of the atom and know what an atom is, and become conscious of that of which you are now unconscious, the veil remains there, separating you from the grace, the power, and the dominion which are implicit in a complete and full understanding of the Bible. Let's take a look at the atom, and nothing we say about it will conform to what science says. And this is precisely what religion has missed and should have said when the atom was introduced to the world as the substance of matter. You will never see one atom that can know God. And if you add 1 million atoms together, you will still not find 1 million atoms that can know God. And as long as a man or a woman is an atom or a group of atoms, that individual can never know God. And yet, to know God aright is life eternal. Whoever remains an atom, or a group of atoms, or a configuration of atoms, can never know life eternal. The atom is a robot. And whoever is an atom or a group of atoms remains a robot, because the atom is controlled. Now look over in Alameda. You're in your apartment, and the next thing you know, there's no house around you. There's just 13 tons of steel, 2.5 tons of fuel plummeting out of the sky. An apartment house demolished. What was that plane made of? It was made of atoms. What was the fuel made of? It was made of atoms. What were the people made of? They were made of atoms. What was the house made of? They are made with atoms. Who controls the atom? Nobody. Go down to Texas. There are 15 or 20 kids in a bus. And the driver doesn't see the signals, or he doesn't remember what to do. Something confuses him. He stops at the train tracks, and then suddenly he starts again in spite of the warning. And the bus is demolished by a train. 10 or 17 children die. Made of atoms. The bus, made of atoms. The train, made of atoms. The children. No control. You read about the priest. He was beaten to death. Somebody stabbed him 4 times and ran away. The knife, atoms. The man who stabbed him, atoms. The priest, atoms. Atoms are robots. There isn't a thing about an atom that you can control as a human being. You think you can. You have this sense of controlling the atom. You can smash the atom. You can build skyscrapers. You can build modern cities of the future. But nobody's going to live in them except atoms. And as long as we continue to accept the existence of an atom as a reality, we will find that planes will continue to fall out of the sky. People will still be killed. Soldiers will still go to war. There will be no control because the atom is not under the government of God. God does not control the atom for a very simple reason. God never made the atom. Now take an avalanche. You live in the valley and the avalanche comes down, somebody dies. The avalanche was made of dirt, the earth, and the earth is made of atoms. And God doesn't control that earth. That isn't the earth which is the Lord's. The atomic earth is not of the Father. The flood that comes and demolishes a city is made of water, and that water is made of atoms, and those atoms kill. And the atoms of bombs kill. and the atoms of bullets, and the atoms of germs, the atoms of tumors, the atoms of avalanches and diseases and hurricanes and earthquakes and fire and flood. They kill. And once we accept that atoms are made by God, we have accepted God to be a killer. We have accepted God to create an imperfect world. The very acceptance of the atom as even existent is enmity against God, a denial of the all-perfection of God. Now, this is not your conscious will or desire to call God a liar, a thief, or a killer, or a murderer. But the minute you say one atom exists on this earth, you have said so. And this is what is in the consciousness of mankind. In the consciousness of mankind, atoms exist. But in the consciousness of students who are looking for the kingdom of heaven on earth, every belief that an atom is real, that an atom exists, in spite of the logic of it and the reason of it and the sense perception of it, in spite of the world belief of it, in spite of the overwhelming evidence of science of it, if you wish to break the veil, you must step outside the atom. For you, it must have no existence. The atom profiteth nothing. Henceforth know ye no man after atoms. Atoms are grass. Atoms have no existence in God. Now, when you see that atoms kill, and you therefore know that atoms are not of God, you can go to the 3rd verse in John. God created all that was made. And you see, atoms that kill were not created by God, and therefore, because God created all that was made, the next phrase, that which God did not create has no existence. God did not create atoms, and therefore they have no existence. What's the point of believing that there is no matter if you still believe there are atoms which are the substance of matter? And so we have to go from the belief that there is no matter into the belief that there is no invisible atom to cause the existence of matter. We're taking the legs right out from under the table. Now this then is not a metaphysical study at this point. You're in the mysticism of the understanding which came to Paul. To be atomic-minded is the 20th century translation of to be carnally minded is death. To be atomic-minded is death. And I say this with all sincerity, that science is killing us with atoms. And science will kill anyone who will let him believe that atoms exist in this universe. That means that the true mystic, the true student of Christ, must join Jesus Christ to reach that place where he can say, I have overcome this world of atoms. For me, they have no existence. God did not make them. The atoms that kill, God did not make, and therefore the atoms are not there. And I will not try to say there are some good atoms and there are some bad atoms. There are no atoms. And when this becomes something you will be willing to accept, then you've got to take it into meditation daily. Until for you it's so resonantly clear that you can look at anything in the world and know that whatever you see in this world is based in the belief that atoms are there. That's the universal belief. And that's your human unconscious belief. And you've got to look right at what you see, knowing It cannot be there because atoms cannot be there, and atoms are the substance of that mirage. That is why mankind has not found the kingdom of heaven on earth. Man is still accepting the opinions of science and the hopes of religion, and the middle path goes right through both. Hardly anyone can really believe that religion is going to bring heaven to earth. There's not the slightest indication this is possible for religion to do. Religion has been asleep and will continue to be a sleepwalker. And it will continue to dream. It will continue to walk in its costumes and its rituals, while out here the world falls apart at the seams, and religion will promise forever that in a heavenly hereafter all this will be taken care of. We've learned about that fairy tale. Science, on the other hand, seems to be the great white hope. Science has the atom, and you know, while we're talking about it, science has already passed the place of even believing that the atom is the substance of matter themselves. They simply haven't broadcast it. They are frantically working on a subatom. But that's quite a difference than an atom. They're working on subatoms, and they're going to go into micro-atoms. They're going to diminish in size. They're no longer under the belief that atoms are the substance. They passed that belief. And when they get a new belief, it's going to substitute for the old one, and then they're going to make a great hurrah about the next belief. This is the way it is. And nobody will say, but doesn't that disprove the previous belief you had? What was the substance of everything before atoms were discovered? We've all forgotten about that. And we'll forget about atoms when they get the next name for a new substance. And the answer is they're fishing and fishing and fishing for something you cannot find in a material world. Now you're breathing right now, and you're breathing atoms. The breakfast you had was made of atoms. The fuel you put in your car is made of atoms. And as long as you have been able to do these things today, you're going to continue that those things are reality. You're going to continue in that belief because you know you're going to have 2 or 3 solid meals a day, and if they're made of atoms, you're going to need atoms today. You need atoms to live by. You need atoms to drive by. You need atoms to work by. You need atoms for everything you do. And in the end, the atom buries you, because it never was there. Now, you know, in grade school, there are some who learn at a certain pace. And there's always one who's a little quicker, or maybe 2 or 3. And so the teacher forgets about that 1 or 2 or 3. The teacher has to teach the class. And so that 1 or 2 or 3 who are quicker, they simply do not go at the level of their capabilities. They have to be slowed down for the class. Our work has been just the opposite. There are in this world those who are quicker spiritually, more prepared to receive a certain level of the truth than others. And rather than slow down them so that the masses can get the word, our function has been to find that 1 out of every 1,000. That's why these classes in the main were planned for small groups. We haven't been looking for everybody. We've been looking for that student in the class who normally is slowed down to the pace of the masses, and we are trying to bring the pace up to his pace. And we expect only those students who can move at that pace to be in the class. That's the kind of class this is meant to be. And now you can see why. Because I'm asking you to consider the fact that the atomic universe of science has no existence, that the atomic world of atom smashes does not exist, and to take your faith out of it, that our rebirth has to be reborn out of the atom. And this cannot be done in any way that is known to man except by first understanding it, understanding what makes an atom, realizing that the atom that man is chasing for his extra leisure and extra comfort and extra income is quicksand. As he gets it, he sinks into it. And he spends his life seeking it, seeking more atoms. Everything material that you seek is made of atoms, and as you seek more and more of it and learn to depend upon it, in the end it fails you, because it never was there. Now, when you have found a place where you understand this atom and its non-existence, then you will have to go into meditation with specific exercises. And you will find when you do this, and we'll do several today, you will come to a place where you can consciously know the non-existence of the atom, and yet you will be in another place, right where the world thinks the atom is. Suppose we take a box. Here's a box with 3 dimensions. Now this little box is about 2 inches high, 5 or 6 inches wide, and about 3 or 4 inches deep. And of course, being wood, and wood being made of atoms, here's a box made of invisible atoms. You know God didn't make this box. I can burn it or step on it or shatter it. And yet, there it is in front of you. Now when you know that atoms are supposed to be the substance of this box, and God didn't make atoms, then your mystical question is, where is the box? When you remove the belief that atoms are here, is there a box here? And when you know that atoms cannot be here, can this have length and height and width anymore? Are not the dimensions gone? Can a box that is not here have dimensions? Do you see, it's all predicated on the invisible atom. If the invisible atom is here, then you're going to see a box. And you're going to accept the box. And you're going to accept the dimensions of the box. But once you take the legs out of the table, how can the table be standing if there are no legs? If there are no atoms, and atoms are the substance of wood, can there be a box here? Now I say to you, Jesus Christ says no, there's no box here. There's nothing physical. The message is that only spirit is here, and spirit is not a physical box. Now when you remove the dimensions of the box, the 3 dimensions, because you know that the box is not there, in that understanding you have found the 4th dimension. And that is the kingdom of heaven on earth. You cannot find the 4th dimension, the city that lieth foursquare, until you're ready to tear up your belief in the city that lieth threesquare. Now, if you believe this box is here, you're carnally minded. You're material minded. And to be material minded is death. Because as soon as you accept the box here, you've got to accept a physical body. You've got to accept a physical world. You've got to accept physical conditions like disease and death and disaster. They're just as physical as this box. You can't draw the line and say these are here and those are not. You've got to accept all of the disasters in the world and all of the germs in the world if you believe that box is here. Now, we believe that box is here for all of our lives and for all of our previous lives. And now we're coming to the place where the Bible has brought us. There is no physical matter on the earth. Now, when Joel writes a chapter, this is a spiritual universe, could it be any different than saying this is not a material universe? What's the difference how he says it? This is a spiritual universe, or he says this is not a material universe. They're one and the same. What's the difference if Paul says to be carnally minded is death, or to be materially minded is death, or to be atomically minded is death? One and the same. It's just that we have to put the pieces together and face them, and now you have to take a box like that, and you have to go into meditation about it. Until you can come to the conclusion that God did not make anything that is temporary, anything that can die, anything that is perishable, anything that is finite, anything that is separated from something else. The Spirit of God is the only creator, and it creates out of its own spirit all that is. And we're in a spiritual universe where there are no boxes. We're in a spiritual universe where nobody can die. We're in a spiritual universe where planes don't fall out of heaven into the ground and demolish people. Why? Because we're not caught in the illusion of the atom. Let's go back now inside ourselves and try to understand this atom. Let's take a good long look at it. There are some atoms that make up this box of wood. There are some atoms that make up the book you read. There are some atoms that make up the chair you sit on, the floor you walk upon. And they're all atoms separated from each other. The chair has nothing to do with this box. They're separated. Remember when Jesus was crucified, how those who stood there, the soldiers, could not divide one garment because it was a seamless robe. It wasn't separated. The teaching there was that the seamless garment we wear is the knowledge that spirit is all, and spirit is not atoms. Spirit is not matter, but spirit is also not atoms. You know spirit isn't matter. Now you must know spirit is not atoms. And spirit is all. That's not a spiritual box. What is it? And so we come to how the box gets there. And that's all the illusion of form in one little box. It's the illusion of your own form. Where are these atoms that we say do not exist? Where are they? They're in the carnal mind. That's why to be carnally minded is death. And what is the carnal mind? There are two kinds of carnal mind, the universal and the individual. They're really one and the same. There is a carnal mind universal, and its thought is the atom. The atom in the carnal mind is the only place the atom exists. In the world mind there are atoms of thought. That's all atoms are, the thought of the world mind. And the patterns that move through those atoms reach your mind. And because your senses are atoms, your senses respond to the atoms all around you. The response of the atoms of your senses to the atoms around you makes the form. Everything you see is your response to pattern thought of the world mind. And the invisible building blocks of the atom enable you to form impressions which appear as the things you call material. In other words, there are 3 illusions, even 4, before you come to the box. There's the world mind, its thought of atoms, there's your mind, and your reaction to the world mind's thought of the atom. The world mind, the atom, your mind, and your reaction. This is the sequence, the quadruple sense of illusion that finally produces that which God did not create. And you may be a mother and create a baby. It's the same process. It's still the world mind, its thought called atoms, in patterns that reach the human mind and then are brought forth into an appearance, and we think it's out there. But if the atoms aren't there, the forms that we think are out there aren't there either. They are in the cosmic mind. The accident of the jet in Alameda and the bus being hit by a train in Texas are the same accident. You don't see them as one accident because they come in different places and different times, but it's like a meteor traveling through the sky, and fringes of the tail fall off here and fall off there. They may come in different areas of the country, but they're all off the same meteor. And everything that happens in this world comes off the same illusion, the same cosmic illusion, the same cosmic mind which engulfs everything that walks the earth. In short, we are walking as atoms in atoms, and this is the tune. There are no atoms out there. And when you remove the belief that they're out there, you will find that nothing is separated from anything. All that separates you from Chicago right now is land and air. But the atoms of air aren't there, and the atoms of land aren't there. Nothing is separated. It's all the one spirit. You should learn how to meditate on the absence of atoms from the world. There are so many ways to come at an understanding. We could go back to Times Square as you watch the bulbs around the building flash out the message of the news. And you realize the bulbs aren't moving. The bulbs are stationary. What's moving? And yet there's a feeling of motion, but the bulbs aren't moving, and that's all that's there. The illusion of motion is a reaction of the senses. And that's what gives us the news. You see a screen, and there's a horse on the screen in a movie. It runs for 50 miles. Now, how can a horse run for 50 miles on a screen that's only 50 feet wide? You're willing to accept it. The screen is 50 feet wide, and if the horse ran for 50 feet, it would be off the screen. But it runs for 500 miles or 50 miles, and we accept it. Now come out here in this world of atoms, and it's the same illusion. We're willing to think we're doing all these things. And we are doing them only because we have accepted the material appearances as real. They are made of the cosmic illusion called atom or the mist. And when you know the atom isn't there, you know the external world isn't there. And this means absolutely nothing to the human mind. But it does to that 1 in 1,000 whom we have been led to believe is attracted to this particular class. 1 in 1,000, you may be the 1 in 1,000 from your area, from your particular household, in your particular lifespan. And if you are that 1 in 1,000, as has been indicated by the previous classes, then for you the meaning of there are no atoms out there becomes the basis for a way of life. What are we to be reborn out of? What's the point of talking about a first resurrection or a transformation or a Christ mind if we're not to be reborn out of something? You see, it has always been the invisible atom we're to be reborn out of. The belief that we are that invisible atom which has been labeled as the essence of a man by science. Now let's meditate on there are no atoms here and see if you are quickened. I found it necessary to practice this many, many times. But from it came a great peace, a great assurance, a great certainty. And I can tell you, too, from it came a great deal of power. Because once you can rest in the assurance that the atom is not here or there, you have found the unconditioned, unconfined universe of spirit. You are way ahead of every Nobel Prize winner in the world. You are out of the ignorance of science and religion. You are out of all the dismal failures that have been brought into this earth by well-meaning souls trying to help mankind. And you're doing it the Christ way. Not what would be reasonable to a human mind, but you're refusing to live in that which God did not create. There are no atoms here. There are no atoms anywhere. And therefore, all things that allegedly are made of atoms are equally non-existent. That's how you will find the capacity to come above the belief that matter has reality. The invisible substance of matter does not exist. And then the carnal mind to you will be exposed as a fraud. The universal belief in matter will be exposed as a fraud. You will find yourself in not a material consciousness, but released into your spiritual consciousness. If there are no atoms, where are the material conditions which depend on the existence of atoms? They are equally non-existent. What are the germs? The germs are only there in the cosmic mind because we think there are atoms to cause germs. But if there are no atoms, the germs have no substance. They're exposed as only ideas in the cosmic mind. Every so-called evil condition on the earth has no substance to support it when you know that there are no atoms. And when your consciousness has no atoms, you have found that infinite vacuum which is filled by the Spirit. If you had a quart pitcher and you had a quart of orangeade and a quart of lemonade and wanted to pour them both into the quart pitcher, it couldn't be done. So it is with Spirit. If you have atoms in your belief, there's no room for the Spirit to fill your consciousness. You can't fill your consciousness with spirit and matter, with spirit and atoms. And so there must be a conscious routing out of what had been the unconscious acceptance of the existence of atoms. When you consciously route out that unconscious acceptance and knowingly refuse to accept the belief that atoms are the substance of anything in this world, you will find a light begins to dawn. You will find the Christ mind begins to come over the horizon to take its place as your mind. You will be able to see why the Christ could appear where a storm was, and without thought, knowing the non-existence of a substance to make a storm, could remove the appearance of a storm, could appear in a room where there is death to a 12-year-old and know there is no atom there to make a 12-year-old die, no atom there to make 12-year-old bodies, only spirit being there. There is no substance to cause death. There is no substance there to die. The atom is non-existent. All that is there is the Spirit of God. That consciousness unveils the non-existence of the atom, and life flows. That's the same consciousness that said, "You cannot bury me," because you were not looking at a body made of atoms. Having overcome the atom, you know God aright. And only by overcoming the atom can you know God aright. And no matter how you try to think it out, you'll come right back to the same solution that has been found through the ages. You must go back into the deep womb of silence, there to let the Christ you have invited by your acknowledgement of the non-existence of anything unlike God. That which can kill is not of God. That which can die is not of God. And you'll find that every condition in the world, every problem, every evil is found only in the atom, which has no existence. When you overcome the belief in the atom, you overcome the belief in all of the conditions of the world, because that's where they are. On your first meditation about there are no atoms out there. You may not find anything startling happening, or on your second or third. I assure you, if you will do this every morning until you do find something, you will know why you have been brought into this study. Now it should be clear then that what we are now recommending is contrary to everything that science teaches in the world today. And yet, it is the great purpose of the Bible to take us out of the false directions of science, out of the false directions of religion, and to restore us to our soul. The only way you're going to step out of the atomic world that dies is to live in the soul which is not in atoms. Your soul is free of this atomic universe. Your soul is not in space, not in matter, not in time, not in the motion of matter. And as long as you believe there's an atom, you're not in your soul, you're in your mind. When you get past the belief in matter, in the atom, you'll find you're in your soul. And this opens you to reality. Now, there's a sequel to this. To be carnally minded is death. But, says Paul, to be spiritually minded is life. As the veil of the atom disintegrates in your belief, and you are spiritually minded, you're in the seamless garment. You're not in separated atoms. You're in the one. The one is not 5 billion atoms. The one is the one. There are no atoms in the one. In the realization of the one, you're out of the atom. And if you're sitting in an Alameda apartment house and a plane plummets out of the sky, I can assure you it won't hit that building. If you're sitting in a bus and the driver goes through where a train is coming, I can assure you something will happen to prevent that accident. Wherever you are in the knowledge that the atom does not exist, you are immune to the action of the atom. And that's what you're going to discover for yourself when you have your meditations on the non-existence of the atom. You will find that those who suffer in this world are suffering from their unconscious belief that the atom exists. They don't even know that they believe it. Never gave it any thought. Just took it for granted. And when you take yourself out of that unconscious belief, I believe you will see very pleasant and startling things happen in your life. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was life. The Word was God, and God was the life. But you see, that's only a translation. It hasn't done the world much good to see that in the Bible. The New Translation someday is going to be, before the atom, there was spirit. In the beginning means before the atom. Was the Word means there was spirit. Before atoms came into the consciousness of man, there was the spirit. And we must go back before the beginning. Because before the atom, I am. You take yourself out of the creature called the atom. Now there's a great symbology in the fact that the atom, which has no real existence, is also Adam in Genesis. Because out of Adam comes Eve. And out of Eve comes her progeny. And out of her progeny comes all of God's declaration that he will curse her progeny. Do you see the sequence? Out of the atom comes our belief in matter. And out of our belief in matter comes the problems of the world. The dying world is born out of a belief in the atom. Just as all the accursed progeny of Eve come out of Adam. It's the source of the nothingness which is called the arm of flesh. I also believe that with this knowledge and the practice of it, you will quickly find another level of the healing consciousness for yourself, for those who come to you. It is definitely going to prove to it be a new landmark in our work. There are no atoms, and you're required to know this in order to come into the Christ consciousness. To practice this, you cannot serve the belief that there are atoms and serve God too. That's serving two masters, the spirit and the atom. You can only serve the one master to find your life eternal. And so I'm going to recommend that each morning our meditation be, there are no atoms. Let the significance of that lift you up to where you can look at a material world and know that it cannot be there because it is composed of atoms that are not there. This is a good time to pause, collect ourselves, and then we're going to put our knowledge to the test in the second half. Returning to Paul in Romans 8, because the carnal mind is enmity against God. For it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can it be. So then, they that are in the flesh cannot please God. What's the point then of 1,000,000 worshippers in the flesh praying to God? If this happens to be true, they that are in the flesh cannot please God. In other words, flesh is a denial of the allness of spirit. And the spirit being all, if this be the truth, then flesh has no existence. What's the point of continuing to be the 99 in every 100 when you've got to be the 1 in the 100 who knows that flesh has no existence in God? And therefore atoms which comprise flesh have no existence. If we were speaking today, he might have phrased it, so them that are in the body of atoms, which appears as flesh, cannot please God. And then the great revelation, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. If so be the Spirit of God dwell in you. If you abide in the conscious knowledge that you're not made of atoms, not of flesh, but of the Spirit, only then are you in a position to be quickened out of the false sense of mortality. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of this. And if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin. In other words, if you have accepted that you're not made of atoms, but are the Spirit, the Christ, then there is no sin in the body anymore. The body is dead because of sin means that no longer is the body subject to the evils of the world. But the Spirit is life because of righteousness. If the Spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Spirit that dwelleth in you. You see, this is how we come into receiving the allness of God, to be joined heirs in Christ. When we cast out what we are not, that which we are is revealed to us. There's a place in Matthew which brings this out very beautifully, and I want to go over that for a moment. It's in the chapter 17, Matthew 17, 24 to 27. This is really a statement about the nature of grace. I expect to find it any minute. When they had come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? He saith, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? And Peter saith unto him, Of strangers. And Jesus replied, Then are the children free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, cast an hook, and take up the fish that first cometh out, and when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take, and give unto them for me and thee. Now, in this little series of verses, we are shown that there is a way of life called grace to those who do not dwell in the belief of a universe made of atoms or matter. And so we want to look at this. They that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Does not your master pay tribute? And he said, Yes. But Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou? Of whom do the kings of earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or strangers? Now this was a head tax. That was the tribute. And all it means is that as a human being, you have to pay a head tax. In other words, This tribute, this head tax, is your karma. Every person dwelling in the flesh is in karma. There are no exceptions. And the kings of the earth take tribute. In other words, material law makes you pay a price. The belief in atoms is the same as material law. The belief in the existence of matter or atoms makes you pay a head tax. And the tax is your own head, actually. That's what you pay. Atoms keep us dying. But there's a way out. Of whom do the kings of earth take tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? And Peter says, of strangers. And that means there is karma for strangers only. Only the head tax is paid by strangers, meaning strange to spirit. Those who have not been awakened to spirit are called strangers. And those who have been awakened to spirit are children. They do not pay a head tax. And that head tax is your physical self. You have to sacrifice it. You think it's yours, but you find it's only borrowed. To step out of karma, we must be awakened to our spiritual self. And we cannot be awakened to it while we still cling to the belief in a self that is not spirit. The transformation is only in consciousness. And then as you make the decision that I am the spirit, not matter composed of atoms, that there is no matter composed of atoms, there are no atoms to compose matter, then you don't pay the head tax, because the Master now says, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea. And the sea now is not the human mind. The sea is the soul. Go to your soul, which is not in matter, which does not receive of the world mind, which is not subject to the illusion of atoms, of flesh, of matter, of form, of condition, of material law. Your soul knows nothing of karma. Your soul pays no head tax. Go to the sea. Cast an hook. And that hook is your acceptance of identity. The hook you cast is who you are. If your hook is material self, you're going to catch material fish. If your hook is spiritual self, this is what happens. Take up the fish that first cometh. When thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. The tax is paid for you. Your karma is confiscated. There is no karma in the spiritual identity which accepts no atom. This is what it's all about. And so at every opportunity, the teaching comes to us with different words, different analogies, different parables, always telling us that he hangeth the earth on nothing. This world is made of atoms that have no existence. Now, after you've gotten to the place where, through the meditations on there are no atoms, you should have a certain flexibility to be able to go into more creative meditations. You should be able to spend some time, and I'd like to request that you consider doing it again this week, in which you transform your environment. In this meditation you dwell in the knowledge that just as there is no atom or group of atoms to make a box, there are no group of atoms to make a room. And so there is really no box in God. I'm looking at a group of atomic ideas, and I'm looking from the atoms of my senses. And the atoms of my senses are reacting to the atoms in the cosmic mind, because my senses are in the cosmic mind. I'm just a state of atomic reaction. That's what causes the appearance of the box. The atoms of my senses reacting to the atoms which are patterned in the mind of the cosmos collide. And the collision of my sense atoms with the patterned atoms in the mind of the universe, running at different speeds, different ratios, produce different forms. It's the difference in the speed, intensity, ratio of the atoms of your senses that produce the forms that you see. The only place these forms exist is in the cosmic mind. And you see them because your mind is in the cosmic mind. Your senses are in the cosmic mind. But the kingdom of God is not in the cosmic mind. That's why Christ raises the blind man to vision, the deaf man to hearing. That's why Christ can say to the leper, "Thou art cleansed," because only the veil of atoms had made a leper and a blind man and a deaf man. Your senses are made of this supposed material called atoms, and therefore the only thing they can know is a like material called atoms. That's the level of the fourth world. That's the level of mankind. It's the level of Adam and atom. The atom man is in the level of the atom. But the spirit man is in no level. So now start to transform your environment in your meditations. Suppose, for example, we had a string of pearls and we put it in a box. If the box isn't there, how can it hold a string of pearls? If the room isn't here, how can it hold a group of persons? You've got to have a room before you can have persons. The only way you can have a room is to have atoms. And when the Master walked through the wall, he was showing you there's nothing there. We, in the cosmic mind, create the walls around us. We create them by the reaction of our senses to the ideas in the cosmic mind. And these little building blocks of atoms enable us to create these mirages. When the Master walks through the wall, he's showing you that there's nothing there. It isn't composed of atoms like science thinks. And what's walking through is not an atomic body. And so you must sit in the quiet of your room, and you must spend time transforming your environment until you can remove the chair you sit on, the walls around you, the ceiling and the floor, and the body you think is sitting on a chair. And this is all done in consciousness. It becomes a very beautiful exercise in which you finally feel the nothingness of form, the nothingness of flesh, the nothingness of the atoms, and the allness of spirit becomes alive and vibrant, and it's all you. Where the wall seems to be, I am. Where the chair seems to be, I am. Where the flesh seems to be, I am. And who am I? Who is that I am? That is the infinite Spirit of God. That I am, I am. I cannot be that I am and be this which sits within walls. You're taking yourself into the sea, into the unconfined soul region, which is not bound in flesh, and you're resting in the soul. You're letting the false veil of the senses fade away. This exercise of transforming your environment is as important as knowing there are no atoms there. And again, at first, you're swimming against the tide because it's so strange, so seemingly unnatural. But finally, there's a breakthrough. You begin to become conscious of another universe. A universe where there is no disease, where there are no problems, where there are no physical forms but forms of light. A universe where death spans and lifespans are unknown. There's no interlude between lifespans because there are no lifespans in this other universe. There are no avalanches and floods and fires. And for you it becomes a real universe. And there are signs. That becomes your Damascus. That becomes the way that Christ makes itself known to you. And there's still another exercise. It's only for the 1 in 1,000. It's not for the rest. Maybe this is that class in which everyone is the 1 in 1,000. You take your right hand, and this is in your meditation. Jesus said, "Let me wash your feet, Peter." Now you can see that he was saying to Peter, this foot is not made of atoms. This foot is not made of flesh. This foot is a spiritual idea made manifest. That's all it is an idea. It isn't you, Peter. It's the level of your consciousness which has produced what appears to be a foot. And your body, Peter, is the level of your consciousness made visible. The body is not you, it is the externalized image of your consciousness. It's a signpost along the way telling you where you are in consciousness. And so let's take our hand the same way. As a human being, we think this is my hand. Not in this exercise. This exercise is a mystical exercise. And this exercise is that this is not my hand. This is not my hand. And that's the subject of the exercise. Seems to be. I always thought it was. But in this exercise, I want to see that I am mistaken. The reason this is not my hand is because I do not own this hand and I have no jurisdiction over it. I used to think I had jurisdiction over it, but I discover that my hand is a robot. I have absolutely no jurisdiction over this hand. The minute I decide I want to keep this hand, I discover that I have no jurisdiction. It's just borrowed. I can't keep it. How can I call it mine if I can't keep it? I have it for a length of time, and there is no time. I have a mess of atoms that do not exist, and I call it my right hand. And in this exercise, I want to see this is not my right hand. Christ has no right hand. Christ has no left hand. Christ has no heart. Christ has no human brain. I do not have a right hand, or else I am denying my Christhood. That's a difficult exercise. But again, the right hand or the left or whatever organ you were to use as an example in this, is the same as the foot that Peter had to have washed. He wanted the rest of him washed, but the Master said, the foot is a good enough example, Peter. If that's washed, the rest of you is washed. Because the foot represented what our hand represents to us now. The belief in spirit or atoms. Which do you believe? Science says your arm is made of atoms. Christ says you are spirit, that there are no atoms there. Do you have a right arm? If you have a right arm, you are disagreeing with all of Scripture. You are disagreeing with the Master's instructions to know no man after the flesh. And you are still disagreeing with Paul's statement, to be carnally minded is death. And so once more, we come to a very difficult exercise. I have no right arm and no left arm. And I cannot know this with my mind. It is impossible for my mind to know this for the simple reason that my mind is a co-creator of the illusion of that right arm. Then what is there if a right arm isn't? God is there. And God is not a right arm. And where the left arm is, God is there. Everywhere, God is there. Spirit is there. And where spirit is, not only your right arm and your left and your toes and your body and everybody's body in the world is also there invisibly. Wherever spirit is, infinity is. And everything you can see in this entire world, all collapsed into one little point, is right there in spirit. In fullness. You are seeing a panorama in a very fractional form, to be sure, of the fullness that is at every point in spirit, everywhere. The whole world is fanned out to show you the fullness that is at every single point, because everything you can see in this entire world, and more, is at every single point of the world, in the infinity of spirit. Not just a right arm or a left. Infinity is everywhere now. And this again cannot come to you mentally. It has to come in the silence of the mind, in the sea or soul. And then you will discover you have found one of the great secrets of the Bible, that we're not in the atomic age at all. The atomic age never was. The Bible is now ready to lift us out of the belief in the atom. It has ever been here for that purpose. Before you ask, I shall answer, and the answer was the Bible, which is going to take us out of the atom. We had to first discover the atom to be taken out of it. That has been the contribution of science, but it has not yet discovered what it contributed. We call it now the middle path because it is between all of the known beliefs in the world. You go right through the middle of everything everyone believes, and you walk in the invisible spiritual body. You do not walk in the physical environment made of atoms, or the physical body made of atoms. You have learned to transform your environment, to transform your belief of selfhood. You're lighting the flame of self. You're knowing spirit aright. You're finding that life eternal which is not in a human form. And you cannot find it if you insist on dwelling in the belief that you're living in one in a world made of atoms. Now, today we've had 4 exercises. And if you even practice one, you'll do well. One with a box. To see that the atoms of your senses are creating that box out of mind patterns flowing through the universe. And you're using invisible atoms that aren't there to create the illusion of a box. When you touch that box with your fingers, the atoms of your fingers are reacting to the atoms of the box. And the atoms of your fingers aren't there. And the atoms of the box aren't there. Two substances that aren't there are reacting each to the illusion, creating the feeling of texture. If you hear that box fall, the atoms of your ears are reacting to the atoms of that box. Again, atoms are creating the illusion through a reaction. And then if you put something in the box, you're putting it in nothing. You're putting an illusion in an illusion. Now that's why we're out of metaphysics at this point into mysticism. Anything that denies the allness and the indivisibility and the perfection of the one Spirit is not here. Atoms are divisible. They can be smashed. Atoms are divided. Atoms are a lot of empty space. And when you hear science describe atoms as electrical energy, you're hearing about the illusion of electrical energy. The only thing electrical energy can kill is another illusion. It's up to you not to be that other illusion. The only thing a germ can kill is another illusion, like itself. It's up to you not to be that other illusion. It's up to each of us to be that 1 in 1,000 or necessarily 1 in 1,000,000. Because the purpose of this class has been to gather together from all over the area those who are going to be doing real world work. And the world work you're going to do is simply to look out from your spiritual consciousness knowing that there are no atoms out there. That's the sum total of your world work. There are no atoms out there. And so nothing can be formed of them, and rest in that knowledge. When you start doing your world work from that simplicity and that depth, you will be surprised to discover the new depth in you. There are no atoms out there. And because atoms are that which builds this world, all of the so-called evil conditions of the world are not out there. I don't have to do anything about them. I have to live in the knowledge that atoms are not out there. And if you have the realization here that atoms are not there, you'll understand some of the great healing works in the Bible. At this moment, you may not know it, but you will discover someday that you have just been given a great power. When you can come to the real understanding that there are no atoms out there, you'll understand that spiritual power is within yourself. You will find grace is flowing. You will find people telling you wonderful things are happening because they have entered your consciousness. First one then is to work with the box until you can understand why it and its dimensions are not there. The second is to know atoms are not out there. The third is to know that because atoms are not out there, your environment is not out there, and so transform your environment in consciousness, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour if you can. These are some types of meditation on this subject. And finally, take any organ of your body and recognize that it is symbolic of the whole body, and know that it is not there. because the atoms that are to comprise that organ are not there. You see, if you have accepted atoms are not there, you've got to accept that your hand is not there. So these are 4 exercises, and really you could spend the next 3 months with them. But you can take one, and you'll find it better to take one and dwell with that one again and again and again until it makes an impression on you. Then the other 3 will open up. And pretty soon you'll discover that you're walking with the disciples real well. You'll find that the gold in the fish's mouth doesn't startle you so much. In fact, you kind of anticipate something like that to happen in your life, because the idea is that grace must flow where there is a spiritual consciousness. And when you have eliminated the belief in atoms, forms, conditions made of atoms, you're pretty close to a spiritual consciousness where grace flows. Then you are spiritually minded, which is knowing God or knowing Spirit aright, and that is life eternal. Now this then marks the beginning of the first class of this series. What we're trying to build now might be called the principles of resurrection. What are the principles of the first resurrection which prevents our knowing death? We're trying to develop these through these 7 classes so that we come to the golden city. I have a degree of confidence that we can come to a place where most of us feel a new kind of liberty, a new kind of freedom. I'd like to reach the place where, at the termination of the classes, we have reached that inner freedom, peace, harmony, and let us call it confidence, that the world holds no fear for me in any way anymore, because it is made of atoms that aren't there. And I can walk through the illusion of the atom, living in what is really there as a self that does not know death. Not carnally minded, but spiritually minded. Not atom-minded. This leads to the quickening. The quickening leads to the harvest. Now we have found the tip of the sulfur match that lights the flame so that all of the truth we have learned begins to blaze. And we must stay with that match until it bursts into flame. The sowing, the renunciation of the atomic belief takes the underpinnings out of all matter. And then the harvest comes, because when we have cleansed ourselves of all false beliefs in our conscious world, right down into our unconscious world, bringing it up into our conscious, that which happened to Paul happens to us, and we are smitten by the light. It doesn't have to blind you, it doesn't have to knock you out, but it comes. And it comes to each in another way, in another group of circumstances, and it unmistakably tells you that you have found the universe of light, of self, of being. And you are the living Bible itself, living out the experience of self. The flame is lit. The spiritual sowing and the harvest become one and the same. Cause and effect now bring you into the knowledge of ever-present perfection. All that is here, when you eliminate the belief in the atom, is the presence of perfection. And that is the only shield you ever need. The atom is unsafe. The spirit is safe. The atom is imperfect. The spirit is perfect. The atom is lacking and limited. The spirit is perfectly complete. Rephrase, re-identify the world around you as nothing but atoms that aren't there. Those of you who are deep Bible students, you can go through the Bible now and you'll find a whole new Bible. Everywhere you see flesh and matter, that was in the pre-atomic age, when they didn't know anything about atoms. It seemed to us they didn't. But we were the ones who were ignorant. They knew all about atoms. They knew there were none. It's taken us 1,800 years to discover that which they already knew didn't exist. Wherever you see matter and flesh in the Bible, they're talking about atoms that don't exist. That's what illumination did through the prophets. And now that we have the atom, you'll find that Bible will shout out at you. The pure at heart know no atoms. Blessed are they that mourn. Nothing died but a concept called atoms. The very soul is still there, always. There will be new things in the Bible that you never saw before, coming at you in a new light. Don't throw your Bibles away ever. You'll find that every Bible is going to take a new importance in this world. The Bible is going to be stronger than the bomb. But it must be a real Bible, not just pages in a book. It must be the Bible of spirit in consciousness. Let's have a final meditation today. Before you came into the belief of being a form made of atoms, before you appeared on this earth in a form made of atoms, you always existed as pure spirit. And you always will. And even now, this second, you are that infinite spirit. The mist that has fallen on the consciousness of man has a purpose. It's strictly the misidentification of it that has caused our lack of direction. We haven't used this mist of atoms for its purpose. Disengage yourself from it and see it only as the image placed for you out there by your consciousness. Then you'll know the nature and quality of your consciousness. Let the mist of atoms be your guide. Simply don't identify it as yourself, but as the image your consciousness is putting out there. And everywhere you look, you're looking at the image that others are putting out there through their consciousness, which they have identified as themselves. Remove that identification. You're not looking at anyone's self anywhere. You're looking at consciousness putting out images. You're looking at invisible consciousness everywhere. And behind each invisible consciousness is the full divine consciousness itself, That's all that's really there. And as you apply directly to that divine consciousness everywhere, rather than to the invisible consciousness and its externalized image called body, you'll find you're walking in the golden city, right here. You're in the one divine consciousness, and you are the one divine consciousness. And then be still. The one divine consciousness is doing all it should do. It's running a perfect divine universe. And you're all of it. You're not a fraction of it. You're the divine consciousness behind every form you're looking at. There are no separate pieces of consciousness, no divided consciousnesses. It's all your divine consciousness. Each form you're looking at is another fraction made visible of the one self that you are. You're behind the veil of the atoms. And we're only beginning. We are not accepting the imaged bodies that show forth. We are not carnally minded. We are not enemies of truth, of spirit, of God. We are spiritually minded. And as this deepens, we will find that life, which knows no beginning and no end, is the only life we could ever be. That is where you find the gold in a fish's mouth. The symbol of the signature of Christ in you is the grace that flows through you. That is like a painter signing a canvas. As grace flows through you, that is the signature of Christ. And then that life that you experience in your quiet shows you its perfection. Not a limited human sense of perfection, but an eternal perfection. A whole perfection. A perfection that leaves nothing missing. Now, I can't tell you what text to use for the next lesson because I'm not using one either. These 7 lessons will not be with texts. Our text will be the living Spirit. And to keep pace with this class, it's necessary for you to take the suggestion of the 4 different kinds of meditations and develop one very well. You'll do better develop one well than 4 unwell. Put the other 3 on the shelf of your mind for some future use to come back to. And if you finally reach the place where you have one, get on with the second. And then appear wherever you are, not carnally minded, but in the knowledge that where you are is the invisible spirit without atoms, that nowhere that you are atoms present. Let that be your consciousness to the best of your ability. And you will find into that consciousness will flow and then externalize a different kind of living experience in the continuity of your day. It won't be a material consciousness expressing. It won't be an atomic consciousness expressing. It will be a divine consciousness expressing perfection. And before you ask, I shall answer, just as I provided gold in a fish's mouth, so shall I provide all that is necessary in your experience if you will give me that transparent consciousness which has unveiled the atom. If you find the weather is bad, be still and know there are no atoms out there to cause good weather or bad weather. You're looking at a cosmic picture. Just be still in the knowledge there are no atoms. Don't be surprised if good weather appears. If you find any untoward circumstance in your life, be still and know there are no atoms out there. Therefore, there be no material conditions, because there are no atoms to make matter, which is a condition. And therefore the material conditions which you have not accepted because you know there are no atoms out there in your consciousness cannot remain there long. All you've got to do is remain patiently in the quiet, come back to it again and again if necessary, and you'll find a change in those conditions, an adjustment, a substitution, a new thing entering. The divine will always express divine effect and not material effect. And that divine effect in the invisible will show forth as improved material effect. You see, when you take away the atom, you're living in the realm of cause, and you're no longer under the head tax, the karmic law. You're no longer paying tribute to the atom. Well, that's a good start for today. Pleasant journey home, and thank you very much.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into our channel. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button below. It really helps us out. And why not share this video with your friends? Spread the word and help us reach more people. Lastly, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so you never miss a new video from us. Thanks for watching and see you next time.